What's up, everyone? Philly Insider. It's been a hot minute since we've been on here. Did a couple off-season videos, but pretty horrendous way to end the season last year. Me and Drew needed a break. A lot of life stuff going on, so we're back though. I don't know how many people are going to be here because it's been forever since we've been on here, but we're going to hop into this 2025 journey with all of you, no matter how many that is. So we're excited for it. Drew, been a while. Just want to ask how you're doing, how you're feeling about the team, how you're feeling about March Madness right now. You've had some stakes going on in that too. Talk to me.
Yeah, I mean, I've been good. I've been busy though. I always got something going on, but I always love making time to do this, and it's I'm ready for the season. I mean, I'm excited for it. The Phillies window, it kind of seems like it's closing a little bit here, so we got to kind of get on our horses here and maybe win a World Series this year.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's going to be hard to go through the NL with the Dodgers, but I'm ready for the journey this year.
Yeah, definitely, man. I'm excited too. I feel like I've felt better about the team as time has moved on. I felt better about the few offseason acquisitions we've made. Granted, low risk, high reward type of acquisitions, and you would have hoped they would maybe have made a little bit of a bigger move or bigger splash in the offseason. But I think that's probably going to come next offseason when they have a little bit more space and have some guys coming off the books, whether that's in the form of re-signing some of them and signing another guy or just letting a number of them walk. So I'm curious to see what happens there. We'll talk about that another time, though. Spring training is coming to a close. Thankfully, I don't really enjoy spring training, honestly. I like baseball being back, but I don't really, I don't have the capacity to sit down for a game and watch. Um, who knows by the ninth inning? Like you
Yeah,
don't even in at that point. So I'm glad we're here. Opening day is Thursday in DC at 3:05, and then the home opener is Monday at 3:05 as well. So I'm super pumped for both of those games. Just want to hop in and kind of talk about the team a little bit. General vibe around the team right now. I think it's kind of all over the place. You know, people have a lot of different opinions. Like you said, the window is closing. The Nationals window was closing in 2019, and they started off, I think, 19-31, and then they won the whole thing. So, I
yeah,
mean, hopefully we won't start out off that bad and then have the comeback story. I'd prefer that. But we also started off hot last year, and it didn't mean anything. I mean, that was the most pointless fast start ever, and that was the whole thing last year was let's get out to a fast start, win the division, and then go from there. And it didn't end up mattering at all. So I think the first couple months you got to kind of experiment, see what you got in certain guys. You have to find out what you have in guys like Marsh who have not played as an everyday player, like things like that. You have to test it out in the first couple months, and I think that'll be good. You'll still win games. The pitching staff is unbelievable, so we'll talk about that in a little bit. Um, but it allows you to experiment a little bit while still being competitive. And then we go from there. And then hopefully by July, August, September, they start to get in a rhythm and then go into the playoffs with some momentum. So that's kind of where I'm at with the team. That's the outlook I have on the season. I think they're going to be in the playoffs. How far they go, I don't know. I kind of envision it as another NLCS exit type of year. But I hope I'm wrong, and I hope they are able to make it the distance.
yeah. I mean, as far as offseason acquisitions go, obviously the biggest one was Max Kepler, and it's looking pretty good so far. I think. I mean, he's been pretty good in spring training, and so has Jordan Romano, and those are your two biggest, obviously. But I mean, I think Joe Ross could be good. So I don't know. I'm kind of high on the guys that they picked up this offseason, but that's probably just because they picked them up. Kind of talking myself into it a
Sure.
little bit.
And
But
Lazardo too.
yeah, Luzardo's obviously incredible, and he would be an ace on a lot of teams, and he's our fourth best starting pitcher. So that kind of tells you how good our rotation is going to be this year. I think they're going to win the team a lot of games, even if they're not hitting, which they love to do. They love to go through stretches where they score one run a game, and yeah, I don't know. As far as the playoffs go this year, I think it's going to come down to can you beat the Dodgers, obviously, because the Dodgers are far and away the best team in baseball right now, coming off a World Series. And I don't know. I think if you can win the division, it is an advantage in the playoffs, though. That's kind of my opinion on that. Because I mean, last year playoffs, three of the four teams that had buys won, and
It's
we were
just
the only
us.
one. Yeah, the only ones that didn't. And it ended up being a buy versus a buy in the World Series, Yankees and Dodgers. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's important to win the division, and I think the Phillies can do that.
Yeah, I agree. And even if they don't, like the Braves obviously have some guys coming back this year, so they're going to be very competitive again, which was another reason for a little bit of urgency last year and hope that we could get it done while the Braves were still down and out. But the Braves are obviously going to be a little healthier again. Now they have some guys coming back. So I think a lot of people, the general order they have right now that I've seen, at least national media wise and even locally, is Braves 1, Phillies 2, Mets 3. That's on paper. Yeah, that's probably how it should shake out, honestly. But we'll see. Obviously, there's going to be injuries along the way. Baseball is a long season. It's very unpredictable compared to other sports. So there's a lot of factors that are going to come into play as we move throughout the season. But you mentioned the rotation, and I do want to start with that. That's the biggest strength of the team by far. It has to be one of the top 5 rotations in the sport right now, if not one of the top 2 or 3, along with the Dodgers, obviously, because even if they lose 5 guys, they probably have 5 other guys who would still put them as a top 5 rotation. But regardless, that is the most exciting part about this team is you have a chance to win every single game because of the 5 guys they have going to the rubber. And even you could argue 6, depending on who we're going to loop in there too in this conversation. But let's just start with the first couple guys. I don't have a lot to say on the top 3, except for Christopher Sanchez. I do want to talk about him a little bit more. But Zach Wheeler, Chris Sanchez, Aaron Nola, I mean, those are really your like top 3 guys. I imagine it'll go Wheeler, Nola, Luzardo for the first 3 games. But regardless, that's who I view as kind of like your top 3 starting pitchers. And there's a debate regardless. Wheeler is your ace. There's not much to say there. I mean, I don't think he's going to decline at all. I had someone tell me that they heard from someone they were worried about his spring training. There was a year where he had a terrible April and then still had like an elite season. So I never really worry about Wheeler this time of year. He kind of tends to have bad spring trainings, at least from my memory, if memory serves correct. He's an ace. He added a pitch last year, didn't use it too much, which was good, but used it a little bit, incorporated it here and there just to throw hitters off. He was incredible against the Mets. Bullpen and lineup didn't back him up. That's been the story of his playoff career. He's been one of the best postseason pitchers in baseball. That's all I really have to say on him. Knowles didn't have the best postseason start to end last year. That's been the story of his last 2 postseason starts. He wasn't great against the D-backs. At the same time, the lineup did not back him up at all. He really didn't have much help there. So, like, giving up 4 runs, that's not great in those 2 starts. You would hope for better. But the lineup puts up no runs in both of those games, I believe, or at least not until late. There's not much you can do. So Nola's still like a very consistent starting pitcher. He was great last year, well worth the money. But I think at this point, he might not be a number 2 in this rotation, which is absolutely fine. It speaks more to the strength of the rotation. But I am curious to see how he pitches this year, given that Knowles can obviously fluctuate a decent bit. And then Sanchez, I'll let you talk a little bit more about him before we go more in depth on him. But I mean, he looks like ace material right now, and he has just been getting better at like the past few years. He's up to 97. Yeah, that's going to be pretty gross combined with that changeup this year. His changeup looks amazing. The more distance he creates between the changeup and the fastball in terms of miles per hour, the better. It's just nasty. I think he has the potential. A lot of people are saying Painter could be that ace guy. Absolutely, he could be. I don't know. Like, I think Sanchez could certainly be that guy too down the road that steps into the ace role when Wheeler's done. So just wanted to start with those 3 guys, get your thoughts on them. I'm really excited about those guys and the rest of them too, but those 3 really stand out to me so far.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like you were talking about Wheeler, I mean, there's really not a whole lot you can say, I mean, because it's all just, you know exactly what you're getting out of him, unless something would happen where he doesn't play, you know exactly what he's going to do for you. He's pretty much going to go out there and give you 6 shutout innings every time he goes out on the mound. I mean, He's going to give up a run here and there, but there's a reason he finished second in the Cy Young voting last year. Probably could have won it, but
Sure.
Chris Sale had an amazing season, obviously. So, and the year
Crown.
before, I believe he finished top 10, and then the year before that, he also finished second to Corbin Burns, I believe. So, I don't know, just one of the most consistent pitchers, if not the most consistent and best pitcher in baseball the last 5 years maybe since he signed that contract. So, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't get much better than Wheeler, and I don't think there is anybody better than Wheeler right now, and especially with Garrett Cole being on the shelf this year. That doesn't help. But, yeah, I mean, talking about Nola a little bit, obviously, you kind of know what you're getting out of him as well. He's kind of like a mid-3s ERA guy at this point, and he's going to give you 200 innings, around 210 strikeouts usually, and he's nasty, obviously, and he's a big game pitcher most of the time. He's had a bad couple starts in the playoffs, but generally he's pretty good in the playoffs and in clutch moments. And I don't know. I think that's worth something, and I think the Phillies do as well. So I think that's pretty much all you can really say about him at this point. Everybody knows Nola front and back. He's been here for so long. So yeah. Moving on to Chris Sanchez a little bit. I mean, obviously, there's a ton to talk about, and we could sit here all day. But he's pretty incredible, man. He went from a guy that was literally lost and forgotten 2 years ago to now being one of the best left-handed starting pitchers in the sport. And I don't know where it came from, but I'm here for it, and I'm glad the Phillies got that extension done with him because that looks like a phenomenal deal.
Oh my gosh, that's maybe the best contract in baseball right now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's up there for sure. It's definitely up there. But he's got that poise about him. I think I'm gonna start trusting him more than Nola coming into this year because I don't know how you hit him. I really don't. That changeup is pretty simply one of the best in baseball, if not the best. Might be up there with Devin Williams. I don't know. It's exciting. I get kind of like giddy talking about him because he's so good. And I don't know. I don't want to go too long, so I'll stop it there.
Oh, that was great. I mean, I think also I like that we talked about these three guys first, just because the durability is pretty incredible. And Sanchez obviously hasn't pitched as much as the other two, but he's been in between before he got to where he is now. He was in between kind of a long relief role, starter role, and back and forth between the minors and majors. Obviously that limits your innings a little bit too when you're not a full-time major leaguer and you have no set role. And since he's become a starter, they've managed to keep him healthy even through these velocity increases too. Like last year, his velocity was up in spring training, and now it's up again. So knock on wood, obviously. Like, I don't want to jinx anything, but he's been very durable considering that he hasn't had this workload before. Pitched in the playoffs last year, arguably gave us, outside of Wheeler, like one of the better playoff starts we've seen from a Philly starting pitcher in recent history. I mean, I think he went 5 innings. It wasn't perfect, and he had a couple mistake pitches, but he was great that day. And
yeah,
I think you're going to see him. He's only going to get better in the playoffs as the lights get brighter. He's going to get better, and we'll see. He may get tested on the road this upcoming year in the playoffs, depending on how the rotate, like when they pitch him the rotation, what the matchup looks like. But I think that'd be great for him. I think he can handle it. I don't think that's going to be something that he really struggles with necessarily. He has that mentality that you need to be just a lights out starting pitcher in those big moments. And speaking to the other two, I mean, that goes without saying. Nola pitches 200 innings almost every year without fail, and Wheeler's been able to be on the mound pretty consistently too. And the other thing along with that is we'll get into the rest of the rotation as well. You're going to have Painter coming in July, hopefully. Taiwan is deaf right now. I don't know what his long-term plan looks like with the team. And you have Joe Ross, who's a swingman. So point being, they have options to keep these guys healthy, especially the back end, which we should talk about next with Luzardo and Suarez. Those guys you need to keep healthy because Luzardo obviously had a back issue last year that kept him out, and you need to be able to manage him. And now Rangers having some sort of injury issue. I think that might also be a back issue. I'm not quite sure. If you know, please, you feel free to let me know. But regardless, that's a guy who has not been healthy for any year in his Phillies career, as good as he's been. And he's been a great pitcher in the playoffs. Last year you could argue last year was his worst playoff start. He got into a bunch of jams. He got out of all of them. It was incredible. I mean, he gave us hope for about 5 innings there until Lindor crushed our dreams, which we forgot to even mention, like, departures for the offseason. Jeff Hoffman, thanks for your Phillies career. Best of luck in Toronto. But, I don't want to say hopefully he does bad. Like, I wish him the best. But maybe we dodged a bullet there, and hopefully – it was essentially a trade between him and Romano. I mean, they just switched places. So hopefully we get the better end of that deal. But regardless, I think that's the big thing with those two guys is Luzardo, like you said, ace potential there too. I think he's going to be a really good 3 to have in the playoffs this year. I'm really, really excited for him. I don't really worry about the last 2 spring training starts. It is what it is. He gave a home run to Aaron Judge last start. I mean, that's going to happen some of the time. He's a left-handed pitcher too. But I'm really excited for him. I think that was a great pickup. Did hurt to lose Kaba, but it was a great deal. You gave up him and Marion Boyd. That's really not that much. And Kaba's ceiling was definitely limited compared to our other prospects, I think, just because you don't know how his frame's going to fill out. You don't know if the power's going to be there. He has some great traits, but I'm okay with giving him up. And I also don't have any faith in the Marlins to.
That's what I was about to say. Yeah, I mean,
so feel free to jump in. I've been talking for a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's pretty much nobody you can trust more in the playoffs at this point than Wheeler and Ranger because they're both very proven,
Yeah.
And like you said, last year Ranger had probably his worst start, and it was still pretty good overall. So I I don't know. It's hard to not trust him, but like he's literally like the fifth best pitcher in the rotation at this point. So I don't know what you do in the playoffs. I don't know if you play him because he has experience. I don't know if you play Luzardo. It it's a lot to think about, and it's a lot to ask for them to be both of them to be healthy for the full season because neither of them do it. So it's definitely going to be a challenge for the Phillies, but they've overall done pretty well keeping their starting pitching healthy the last handful of years ever since Dombrowski and company took over. So they must be doing something right, and I hope they can kind of use that magic on Luzardo.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And it's definitely interesting for Ranger. Like, this is a contract year. So a lot of people have said, well, he can just go to the bullpen like later in the year. I mean, I don't think him and Scott Boras are going to be very happy if that happens. So that's not like a clear cut and dry solution. So that's something we'll need to monitor. I think they will run 6-man for a couple weeks in August, at least when Painter comes up, but I'm interested to see um, how things kind of progress from there. And they have to manage Painter too. So I think it's a good problem to have because all three of those guys, there's been injuries. They need to be managed coming off of them. They're also all going to be important in the playoffs, no matter what the role is. So it's a great problem to have. And I think kind of on that note, we can shift to the rotation depth, which the three guys there is really like Taijuan Walker, Joe Ross, and Andrew Painter. And obviously there's a few other guys you might be able to throw in the mix in the minors, but those are the three notable ones, I think. I put in our group chat with Drew that Taijuan was starting to actually like look pretty good this spring, and then he gave up a 3-run bomb right after that. That was just impeccable timing. I did say after that, though, I was like, the funny thing is, I said Taijuan is so back. I said this could be true if he gives up the home run right here. Like that'll also be true. Like then either way, he's back. So um, overall, he's had a pretty good spring. He definitely looks like better than he did last year. Velocity looks fine. And I think in whatever role he's in, if Ranger, well, the nice thing is they have the off days. So even with Ranger not being healthy, they can still go 5-man with the days off the first couple weeks. And I think with Taijuan, just gives you some extra depth. If someone calls, you obviously you pick up that call and see what the offer is, and hopefully are able to ship him out because there's some other team that could use him, and we don't necessarily need him with Painter coming back. But
He's a fine mop-up man, though. He's
yeah,
fine.
absolutely.
Like, he'll go out there and give you a couple innings and probably give up 6 runs while doing it, but it doesn't really matter in those positions most of the time. So,
yep, yeah, and if he's going to play the long man role to start the season, he'll be fine, and that puts Joe Ross in a position to get a little bit of a higher leverage spot, and he can go 1 inning, which I feel like in 1 inning spots he looked pretty good in Milwaukee last year. He hasn't had a great spring. We'll obviously see how that translates to the regular season, but spring training, I mean, if they don't do well, it's spring training. If they do well, it's wow, they're looking pretty good to start the year, and there might actually be something to this. So it's always hard to actually draw conclusions from it. And then yeah, Joe Ross, I'm excited for him. Like I do think he's going to be fine in like a middle relief role. I think if he's pitching in more higher leverage situations consistently as we get into crunch time, there's bigger problems at hand if that's happening.
Yeah, so, you're in desperation mode. Yeah,
exactly. So I'm not worried about him. I think he'll be fine in his role. And then I think, yeah, with Painter, I mean, a lot to talk about there. Obviously, he's looked great coming off the injury in live BP in Arizona Fall League. He looked really good, like really, really good. And it's really exciting that there is the potential that we're going to see him pitch in July this year. And he's not like, yeah, he'll rehab and stuff. He's joining the major league team when he's ready. That's just what's going to happen. So that's really, really exciting. I don't know what his role looks like when we get to the playoffs, but obviously injuries and stuff are going to happen throughout the year. So we say all this about a 6-man rotation and how they need to keep these guys healthy. We could get to July, Andrew Painter comes back, and Luzardo and Suarez could both be on the IL for all we know. So it's a good problem to have again, and I'm really excited for him this year. Obviously, I think everyone is, but they're in a great spot.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I kind of wanted to get your opinion on the back end of the bullpen real quick.
Yeah,
like
let's
kind of move on to the back end. There's really not much to say about the depth of the rotation. Like it kind of is what it is. Like everybody kind of understands. It's Taijuan Walker is the main option until July. So it's just going to be what it's going to be. But as far as the back end of the bullpen, like we have four guys probably, right? Kerkering, Alvarado, Strom, and Romano, I would say.
Yep, correct.
So I just wanted to see how you felt about them.
Sure. Yeah, I feel a lot better about them given what happened in spring relative to how I thought I'd feel about them. Romano and Alvarado have been absolutely gross in spring. Alvarado looks really good right now. He lost weight. He's thrown the most pitches, I think. Oh, go for it.
He was throwing 102 the one day, so
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
crazy.
I think Matt Gelb said that he's thrown 29 pitches over 100 miles an hour, which is far and away first in spring training. And I mean, the results are there too. He struck out like 15, 20 guys and
Yeah,
walked a couple.
yeah,
So
he struck out like 2/3 of the batters he's faced. It's crazy.
absolutely gross, man. I mean, and I think he's added what looks like almost a screwball.
Yeah, it's like a curveball it's like a
Goes the
12-6
other
kind
way.
of. Yeah.
Yeah, like I mean, and Strom said, I think I was listening to Phillies Therapy, if you can't tell, I'm referencing Matt Gelb a lot, but Strom said he doesn't even need to throw it. He just needs to throw it once every couple months for it to be effective because they just have to think about it. So that's really exciting. I'm happy for him too, because I do like Alvarado and he's a great locker room guy. Like they obviously all love him, great energy there. And he's still only 29. Like a lot of relievers usually come into their own at that age. He has a lot of
Yeah.
experience there. And he knew he couldn't keep going the way he was going if he wanted to be successful. So that's really exciting. I'm super excited about him. And I think Romano, I mean, he looks like he did before the injury. And that's really the only blip on the radar for him was the injury last year. He was an all-star before that. And
Yeah.
Bryce Harper said he's a little bit nuts, which is great. You love to hear that. And he does seem a little bit nuts. He has a really good entrance song, which that's really important too. Phillies obviously don't really go specific closer role, but he'll probably get a lot of those high leverage opportunities. I'm really pumped about him. I mean, I do think we might get the better end of that, like quote unquote trade with him and Jeff Hoffman. So,
Yeah.
and it's again, 1-year deal. He has to prove it. Like obviously when you're on a 1-year deal, like your major league livelihood is on the line to an extent. And then Kirkring has looked really good. I'm curious to see how he kind of develops moving forward. He's a younger guy. We've been saying the same thing for the past couple of years. It's just that he's going to continue to get better. But how much better can he get? Because I do think there were some issues in high leverage spots last year where I didn't trust him as much as the other guys. So I'm curious to see how he pitches. And then as far as Strom goes, I mean, just hope he's healthy. He says he's going to be on the opening day roster. I'd rather them just be cautious with him and just give him a little bit of time. He can be on the opening day roster. That's fine. But let's give him like a week or so before we use him.
Yeah, I don't think they would put him on the roster if he wasn't ready. I mean, there's just pretty much zero chance they would do that. So
yeah,
I think I trust what they're saying.
Yeah, definitely. And Strom, like, look, I know he wasn't the best in the playoffs last year. I have a lot of trust in him. He was an all-star. He's only gotten better in his 2 years with the Phillies. I don't know if he's going to pitch as well as he did last year. He had some pretty incredible numbers. I think he had a sub-2 ERA the whole year, if I'm not mistaken. So I don't know if you can expect that from him again, but certainly like 2.8 ERA. I mean, I think that's right in the ballpark of what you can expect. And yeah, he's electric, man. He's very deceptive. We always say that. I'm really excited for those 4 guys.
Is he in a walk year, Strom? Is this his last year?
No, he got extended before last spring. So
okay,
still
that's
got a couple more
because he's been a rock for us. So we need him. So that's big.
Yeah,
that's
all I got for those guys though.
Yeah, I mean, as far as those 4 guys go, like you kind of like hit it on the head with most of them. Like Romano, I mean, he was one of the best closers out there before he got hurt. So, I mean, if he can recapture that and he's on a 1-year, I believe, $8 million deal, that's insane value. If you can get 60 innings out of him and he has like a 2 ERA, I don't really know what else you could want or expect out of somebody, but I think he would be obviously, if he plays well this year, he could be an extension candidate for next year. They could keep him or whatever, but they're gonna need him because they let Jeff Hoffman and Carlos Estevez go. It was risky, but that's just the business of baseball. I don't think the Blue Jays are using Hoffman as a starter like they were saying, but I think they gave him a crazy contract. I think it was like 3 for $45 or something. That's nuts. But anyway. Back to the main 4 here. Alvarado, like you said, it's pretty crazy what he's doing right now. I don't really know what you can say about it. He's striking out pretty much everybody he sees, and nobody's really even coming close to hitting him. I don't know if he's gave up more than 1 hit in spring training. It's pretty crazy. But I don't think he has to use a curveball a lot. I'm kind of like what Strom was saying, but I think if he just throws it maybe like once an outing or something, like make people think about it, make them think it's coming. I don't know. Everybody knows what you're getting out of Alvarado. As long as he's on his game, he's going to be borderline an all-star, and he's going to be probably your main closer if he's on his game. And as far as Kirkering goes, I kind of worry about him being a 2-pitch pitcher. Like
Yeah.
it kind of bothers me a little bit because his stuff is so good, but you can kind of key on it. Like I don't know. It's a
Felt
tough
like that.
situation.
Hitters were doing that last year.
Yeah, it's tough because if he can't add like a third pitch, like I I don't think he has the ceiling that he wants to have. You know what I mean? Like he could be a lockdown closer if he could add a third good pitch, and
Yeah.
it doesn't seem like he's trying to do that. So it's kind of worrying me. I don't know. I guess we'll see. But as far as Strom goes, I feel pretty good about it. I don't think they would put him on the roster if he wasn't healthy or ready. I think they would just put him on the IL and call it a day. So I'm excited for him to give us exactly what he's been giving us the last 2 years. I mean, he's been phenomenal. He's a clutch pitcher. He takes the ball whenever you want him to. 5th inning, 9th inning, 11th inning, whatever. You know, he'll go out there twice if you ask him to. He don't care. Strom's a great guy. He's a great clubhouse guy. He's a good presence for the young guys in the bullpen. He's very good.
Yeah, and just to transition to the other two guys, the only other two guys that are in the pen right now. I mean, Jose Ruiz and Tanner Banks. I don't have a ton to say about them. Ruiz is he's fine in his role. I have really
Yeah.
no problems with him. I didn't realize when the White Sox made the playoffs, he was actually like a decent part of that pen a couple years ago. So I did not know that until this offseason.
Yeah.
But he was fine last year in his role. Like, there's not really much more he needs to do.
He's a fine, he's a fine middle reliever, but like if you need to pitch him in the in extra innings or something, you know, you can do that with pretty decent confidence. Like if you put Tanner Banks up against lefties, you know, you can feel pretty good about it. Against righties, it's a little tougher, but I'm sure they're working on it, and I think they're probably making him get better at that because you can't have a guy that's only like a lefty specialist anymore because of the 3-batter rule.
Yeah.
So I think I feel pretty good about those two guys overall. Like you said, Jose Ruiz he's pretty good. So his stuff's pretty nasty for a middle reliever.
Yeah. It's just when those guys are getting forced into 7th, 8th innings that you get a little bit nervous. But that's not the norm. It's just if guys are a little worn out, other guys need a rest, or if there's injuries, you know, they're not going to be pitching in those moments in the playoffs. So. And Tanner Banks, it does still hurt a little bit losing William Bergoya for a guy who's mostly a lefty specialist and is 32 years old, but it is what it is. That's in the past now. I mean, we'll see. William Bergoya might not even touch the major league field anytime soon, but you know, he was a little bit of a fun prospect with us. So Tanner Banks, 33 years old at this point. Let's hope that he starts to come into his own a little bit right now. But we can transition a little bit more to the lineup at this point and then finish up quickly with the bench, just because bench there's not a ton to talk about. But it sounds like, Drew, they're going to – well, actually, let me get to a few of these comments here first because I've been letting them sit for a little bit. Just wanted to say what's up to Sir Philly and Nerio all the way from Italy. Great to see you guys in here. I would say we both would probably say no on Aldegari getting traded. I mean, obviously we knew the risk with Escobar was not bringing him back, but I really think the Angels – rushed Aldegari up. I don't know how he's been doing this spring. I don't think he's I don't think he's going to be like anything great in the major leagues, honestly. So, and we have a great rotation. We don't need him.
If I remember correctly, we kind of sold high on him, right? He was having a pretty good year last year in the minor leagues. So I don't know. The Angels have a thing for rushing prospects to the majors, and most of the time it doesn't really work out. Like, I don't know. I mean, they have Ben Joyce, who they rushed, which he's very good now.
Yeah.
But outside of that, it feels like it hasn't really worked out for them. So I don't know. Aldegari was definitely not ready. I can tell you that.
Yeah. And again, we do not need him. Like, even if he pans out to be great, we have plenty of other prospects. We have 5 to 6 guys in the rotation. We'll be fine. So I don't really regret that. And I mean, I think this goes without saying. You got to have a plan for Ranger to start the year. Keep his innings low. Keep him loose. I mean, it's a shame because last year was the first year he came into spring healthy, was putting up Cy Young numbers for the first couple months, and then got hurt and was not the same after that. Like, obviously in the playoff start, he battled and he gave us everything he had in that playoff start, but he was not the same from like June on, or well, I guess it was after June, whatever he got hurt last year, it was just not the same. So definitely have to keep him fresh this year and make sure he's good to go.
Yep. Yeah, I don't really have anything to add to that.
Yeah, and just want to say hi to the other Drew in the chat. So, but yeah, let's move on to the lineup because this obviously there's only one guy added to this lineup from the offseason, but it does sound like the change in the order is like pretty definite at this point, where Trey is going to lead off, Bryce is going to hit second. You're going to have Bohm hit third and Schwarber hit fourth. And we'll talk a little bit about after that, but I want to focus on that top four right now because that's the big change. They have won with Schwarber as the leadoff guy. I don't think that's necessarily been the issue. Yeah, go for it.
They have Schwarber batting leadoff today in the last game.
Yeah, I did see that.
I don't understand that. Like, you have all your guys playing and you're batting them leadoff.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Kind of feels weird, but anyway, back to what you were saying.
No, yeah, that's a good interjection because it's been weird how they are like. It seems like everyone's saying that's what's going to happen, and Matt Gelb has said that too. Like all the reporters have said that. Yet they still continue to do that in spring. I guess it's just to have backup plans in case guys get hurt. I don't know. It's weird, but point being, it is interesting. We're now going to have this lineup change that a lot of people in the fan base have been clamoring for a little bit. Not necessarily this specific order, but to move Schwarber back. I just want to say again, I don't think that was the issue. They've won with Schwarber as leadoff guy. Schwarber has given them great approaches from the number one spot. I just think it's that you haven't had any protection since Reese has gone behind Bryce, and now you're going to have a lot better of a configuration. I think of Trey has said this spring that he thinks hitting leadoff will be a lot better for his approach. We'll see if that rings true. I think it will definitely help, but if that's what he thinks, hopefully that definitely helps him. I think with Bryce hitting two, I actually like that a lot. I mean, you see a lot of guys in the lineup now. Like you see a lot of teams, all those teams in the playoffs, their best hitters were 1-2 like at that point. So like, yeah, I do understand you want to get a couple guys on base for your best hitter, but I do think it's better to just get him an extra at bat if you can. So that'll be good, I think, for him. I think Bohm being sandwiched in between Harper and Schwarber will be great because that's going to give him a lot of opportunities to drive in runs, gives him some protection behind him too, takes a little pressure off him. I don't think he's like a great three hitter, but I think in this specific lineup configuration, I think that's fine. And I'm really excited for that. So yeah, I mean, I'm excited about the top four. I think Schwarber, like he's willing to do whatever it takes to win. I mean, obviously I think he's more comfortable at the leadoff spot, but he's not going to be up in arms or complaining that he's the four hitter. And I think he will be productive there too. So I like it. A year ago, I probably wouldn't have said I liked it just because I think the other formula was working. It got us to the World Series and the NLCS. And last year it didn't work, unfortunately, when it mattered most. So, and it's odd because like Castellanos was good in the four hole, I think, in the playoffs. Like he was mostly good in that Mets series. He had a number of big hits, and I don't give him a lot of like props. I do get pretty frustrated with him, but he did his job for sure. So I'm excited about that lineup change. I think it's going to help him this year.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think Trey being leadoff and letting him run a little bit is going to be really good for him. I mean, hopefully he doesn't have another hamstring injury that scares him for the rest of the year. That was crazy, but it's definitely a good change because if you can get 2 or 3 guys on in front of Schwarber, I mean, it kind of speaks for itself. I mean, the guy's going to hit 50 home runs, so if you can put guys in front of him whenever that does happen, that'd be pretty phenomenal. Mm-hmm. And like you said, it's going to give Bohm a ton of protection, and he's going to see a lot more pitches over the plate, which means probably less whiffing because he's very prone to whiff on pitches. And I think if he can get more pitches in the zone as a result of the lineup change, that would just help him so much because last year he had nobody behind him.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm really kind of keying in on Bohm out of these guys because I think the other three, we have an expectation of what we need from them. Even Trey, obviously, he has been very up and down. Like he had a bad stretch to start his career, good stretch from the August, from the standing ovation up until like the All-Star break last year. Oh, hamstring injury, I should say. He was great. Post hamstring injury, he was just not the same. So I mean, there's obviously a little more to be desired there, and that's putting it lightly. But I think there's obviously an expectation on Trey of what he needs to do. Same with Bryce and Schwarber. Like we know what we need from them. I think with Bohm, obviously he's gotten better as the years have gone on. He hasn't quite reached that mountaintop or peak we've expected him to at some point. I don't even think he needs to have like that big breakout year. I think if you just get a little bit more out of him, just a little bit more, I think you're in good shape. And he's a guy who's out to prove something this year. His name was in trade rumors all offseason, which granted, I was pretty frustrated with him. I just don't know who you would have replaced him with, though. I mean, that's the biggest problem. Are you going to play Sosa at third base for a full year if you trade Bohm for another quality player? I just don't think that's going to work out. Sosa's a fine player. He could play all 162 if you needed him to. He's not a quality everyday starter. He's great in his role. He's not that guy. So I think Bohm is out to prove something this year. He hopefully has a chip on his shoulder. And if he doesn't perform well, like his future in the major leagues is fine, but his future with the Phillies is definitely going to be in doubt because
it's very in doubt right now. Yeah. He's like the odd guy out, in my opinion, in the infield right now. Because I think Bryson Stott's going to have a good year, and I think he's going to kind of solidify himself. But yeah, Bohm's kind of like the guy that's right on the edge of like, hey, are we keeping you long term or are we keeping you for the next year and a half?
Yeah,
it's going to be interesting.
100%. And obviously, like as Sir Philly says, Vlad is an opportunity. I think Vlad is going to end up extending with the Blue Jays. I think he's going to stick around there. That's my expectation. But there are going to be options down the road. So. And obviously with Miller coming up, there's going to be certain configurations. It does sound like they really like him at shortstop. So that's also pushed Trey to really work a lot harder at shortstop. And we'll see what that looks like. Because Aiden's coming. I mean, he's making his way up to the big leagues. That's not the question.
He's incredible. He's going to be a very, very good player. I don't think anybody has any question about it at this point. I mean, we saw him in spring training, hitting balls in the gap. That kid's going to be really good, and he's only 20. So we got some good stuff coming.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can kind of talk. Well, Sir says he's an advocate for keeping Bryce out of the outfield. I think we're both with that too. There are certain situations, obviously, with certain guys where Bryce has said he's willing to go back out there, but I think right now it's fine the way it is. So that being said, I want to talk a little bit about the bottom of the lineup too, and just get your thoughts on like the last 5 guys, which I think we'll talk a lot about Kepler out of those. And you mentioned Stott. I want to talk a good bit about him too, but I don't know exactly what the order is going to look like. My guess is it's probably Castellanos 5, Kepler's probably 6-ish. And then who else do you have left after that? JT probably 7, Stott 8, and then Marsh, Rojas 9. Like I think that's probably what it looks like. I don't know exactly, but those are the rest of your guys. And Rojas I group in there just because he'll probably start twice a week. You're going to have him start over Marsh and Kepler once they each get a day off. It sounds like they're going to let Marsh go and play every day, which I like that. Experiment with it. Give him the opportunity because you need to know what Marsh's future is at this point. But I'll let you talk about those bottom 5.
Yeah, I think the Marsh situation is definitely very interesting because they've never done this. They've never just taken the reins off and said, hey, go do this. And I hope they give him, a month, 2 months, something like that to go out there and face lefties and see how it goes because he's been pretty horrible. Like he's been really bad against lefties in his career. And I think they might light a fire under him a little bit and maybe this will motivate him. Maybe he'll be fine. And I think that would be great. But that would kind of push Rojas to be almost off the team because Kepler's pretty good. I think against lefties and righties. I don't think it really matters for him.
Yeah, it's not as big a deal.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where Rojas's place is on this team if Marsh is a great everyday center fielder. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's an interesting spot for sure. And again, I think it is nice in that he can still get 2 starts a week while the other guys each just get 1 day off. Because last year with the whole Witt thing, it was just very odd of all right, where is he going to play today? And who's going to get the day? There was really not, it didn't feel like there was much of a set plan. That was just a major failure, unfortunately. Sorry, Witt. Witt has had a great career. It's a shame that things didn't work out here. And he seems like a nice guy. So no beef with him. But I mean, I obviously wasn't the most happy when we signed him, but I don't have any beef personally with him. He seems like a great guy. But regardless, it's nice that they do have a little bit more of a plan when it comes to that. So Rojas can still play a little bit. Because Rojas has definitely looked better this spring. We said that last spring too, but I think he's definitely made some swing adjustments, and I'm curious to see if any of those really help him in the big leagues. And to your point too, if Marsh is an everyday center fielder and he they take the reins off and he's good to go against lefties, he proves that he can be enough against lefties and survive. There's not really a lot of playing time for him. There's just not, and especially I think to your point too, I think Kepler, I don't really know if Kepler outside of just him getting a little bit older, he doesn't really need the day off performance-wise, I don't think. I think he's going to be fine. So, yeah, I mean, there might be less opportunities. But then on the flip side, if Marsh still continues to struggle against lefties and Rojas has shown that he can hit well and he has made those improvements, and there's going to be opportunity for him. So, either way, I think with Marsh, he's a top 10 center fielder in baseball. That's less. I mean, I don't even say that just because of him. It's because there's not a lot of like great center fielders. He's above average defensively. He's not as good as Rojas, obviously. And I think people lose sight of that. It's like Marsh makes a mistake and they're like, well, he sucks in center field. It's like, well, you're also watching Rojas, who has potential to be one of the like the best defensive center fielders we've seen in a Philadelphia Phillies uniform. So I think with Marsh on that front, like he's hit well, and he did obviously have a little bit of injury issues the past couple of years, but I think he's hit well. There's a lot of strikeout issues, but if he can return to like the 2023 form and just survive against lefties, I think he'll be fine.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Marsh is obviously capable in center field, like as far as fielding goes. So as long as he can, he can hit 230, 240 against lefties and hit, closer to 300 against righties, like he has been, I think he's gonna be fine. And I think he needs to be. I think he tries to be too patient sometimes. I think he needs to kind of lay off a little bit and just let it fly, because he has the strength to hit home runs if he's a little bit more aggressive. So I don't know. I think he just needs to kind of find a balance between too aggressive and not aggressive enough. And I think the same kind of goes for Stott. Like
100%.
they both are very capable, and they've been trying to be too patient, and it's kind of like biting in the butt a little bit. So I definitely look for Stott to have a much better year this year. It seems like he's playing really well in spring training. He's an elite second baseman. He's probably one of the best, if not the best, fielding second baseman in the league. He's been borderline Gold Glove the last 2 years. I don't have anything to say other than that about him.
Yeah, I want to jump in on Stott too. I think he's set to have a really strong season, and
Yeah.
he's been interesting in that, like, Marsh, obviously you don't know what you have in him in terms of like consistency, and there's a lot of other things there too of like, can he stick long term? Obviously the platoon thing. I don't think Stott needs to be platooned. He's been platooned still. Like, I think he's been fine against lefties. He's been better than Marsh, that's for sure. Like, I don't get why they keep platooning him, but I think he's an interesting case in the sense that he had a very patient approach last year. Like you said, it was too patient, and he was still on base around the same percentage of the time. I think it was around 320 again. He might have been closer to 330 the year before, like 329-ish. But regardless, he was still on base a lot, and he worked a lot of walks. It was just the year before, he didn't work a lot of walks, but he put a lot of balls into the outfield. He's not going to hit the ball super hard, and that's fine. Like, he can hit the ball hard, but like he just has a knack for getting the barrel to the ball and poking it into the outfield and finding green grass. That's his game, and I think he can absolutely be a productive player doing that. He can be a sub 800 OPS player who's still a positive piece for this team because of the way he plays the game. And like you said, because he's an excellent defensive second baseman. And he has kind of the advantage of, like, he has a really strong arm because he came from shortstop. Maybe not a strong enough arm to play shortstop, but for second base, he's got one of the stronger arms. And he makes almost every player there. It's really fun to watch him play second. And I'm excited for him this year. He's one of those guys, like, he's never really on anyone's bad side. He didn't really put it together last year. But I think a lot of people have faith that he's going to find a balance between the last 2 years and still have some patience, but also just get more in attack mode. I think if he leans more into that 2023 approach, he'll be fine.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And as far as like JT would go, I think we're talking about the bottom of the order here. So I don't really have a whole lot of expectations for him at this point. I mean, he's really aging, and it's kind of been showing the last couple of years. I think he's still pretty good defensively. He's been allowing more stolen bases, but that's just kind of a product of the rules that they added last year, I believe. So I don't really have a whole lot of expectations for him offensively, though. Like, he's going to steal some bases a little bit. He's going to hit a couple home runs. Like, he might be closer to like a 2020 guy maybe if he plays the full season, which that's fine. It's not like terrible or anything. He's obviously still very good for as far as catching goes, because there's not many good catchers in baseball. He's still easily top 10, but yeah, he's absolutely not the best catcher in baseball anymore. And I think we can all kind of just accept that. He's still good though.
I agree with you. I don't really have much to add. One of the better catchers in baseball, like you said. I think people are saying, I've heard a lot of people say that the expectation is that he walks, like, that they don't re-sign him this offseason. I just don't know if that's true. Again, good luck replacing him. Like, if you want to say that Marchand's going to be the everyday catcher, look, I like Marchand. Obviously, the injuries are one thing. Two, while he's been good, I just don't know if he can play every day. I think
He's
that's
not an everyday catcher.
no, that is an incredible ask 1 year after. He's not Marchand, unless JT gets hurt, he's probably not playing more than 40, 50 games this year.
Yeah. And
So
I don't know if he's ever played more than 40 or 50 games in a season. Like, I don't know if he can. Like, he can't stay healthy if he plays every day. So.
Right. And no hate towards him. We'll talk about him as a bench piece. Love him as a bench piece.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. He's very good. He's shown very good offensive flashes when he's been in the major leagues, which is kind of a swap from what he was in the minor leagues. He was kind of a defense first guy for a while, and he comes up to the majors and he's Barry Bonds. So it's I don't know, but he's exciting.
If you need a good immaculate grid answer, Phillies 300 average season, Rafael Marchand. But he's exciting. We'll talk about him in a little bit. But to that point, like, you can't just let JT walk this offseason and not have some sort of replacement plan. That's going to severely hurt this team. Also, you're not even factoring in, there was a lot of complaints when JT was not playing about the pitch calling and just the relationship with the pitcher catcher this past year. You can't put a price tag on that. So JT knows these guys. He knows the best plan of attack for each pitcher. And the nice thing is, a lot of these pitchers have been here for a long time, as we were talking about. So he has a lot of familiarity with them. You just can't replace him. So I'd love to hear what the replacement plan is if JT is not back, because I don't know what it is. But point being, moving on to the last guy, I think. Well, Castellanos, I don't think we have much to say about him. I'll mention him briefly. You know what you're going to get out of him pretty much, which isn't what we were hoping when he signed the contract. I still think he's a positive player for the team mostly. He's been not great defensively, but he's adjusted to be at least like he's serviceable out there. Like we know he can play right field at a fine enough level. They've made some adjustments out there with him as far as positioning goes. And at the plate, like, he was really good in the second half last year and was one of the only reasons we really had some hope in the playoffs, like in that series. So he obviously is going to be very hot and cold. He is extremely up and down, but I think with his mindset, he's built to handle it just because he doesn't get too high or low himself mentally. So I don't have too much to say on him. I'll let you jump in if you want to say anything about him before we go to Kepler, which I think is going to be more of a topic of conversation.
No, I think I'm good. But I'll kind of move us on to Kepler a little bit here. I'm excited. I mean, he's looked very, very good in like spring training, and he's always had good metrics, like on Baseball Reference or not Baseball Savant. He's always had a lot of red, and that's exactly what you want. But he's just kind of like never put it together. I don't know why. I don't know his history like that. I'm not going to pretend I do, but I don't know if he was getting hurt. I don't know if he just, I don't know what happened, but he was very, very good as far as the metrics are concerned. And I think he could easily put it together this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he had that surgery after the season. I think he had the abdomen injury last year, like that. I mean, the core is such a huge part of swinging a baseball bat. That controls everything. If you don't have some level of core strength, you're going to struggle offensively. And if there's an injury there, that's going to be a major issue. Now, there's guys like Prince Fielder who might beg to differ. You know, I don't know if he had like the best core strength in the world, but he was still a really good hitter. So they're obviously hitters come in all different shapes and sizes. But I think for a guy like Kepler with his game, like that's a major issue. If you have, it's one thing to not have great core strength. It's another thing to have a core injury. That's a major issue. So I think that severely limited him last year. And like you said earlier, Drew, like he's hit fine against lefties. You know, he's not gonna be an elite hitter versus lefties, but he's fine enough to play every day, and they're going to play him every day in left. So I'm excited about him.
Let me sidebar you real quick. Rangers going to begin the season on the IL. So there's your news. Yep. So they said Taiwan's going to be the fifth starter.
All right. So there we go. And I think they'll be fine. They'll survive a couple weeks without him. But disappointing for Ranger in a contract year. That's not going to help his payday this offseason. So
yeah. I mean, that's the main thing that's going to hold him back from getting paid is the injuries. Yeah. And it's every season he has something pop up. He's never played a full season, and he's might never play a full season with the way he gets injured, because it's not like ligaments or anything. It's just like, you know, little tiny things like this, like back, and like I don't remember what else he had, but he's had some fluky injuries, and it just seems to happen every year. So I don't know.
Yeah. I don't have much to add to that. It's it's an unfortunate issue for him, but hopefully he can come back strong and help the team this year for sure, in a
Yeah.
contract year. So
Sorry to interrupt you there. Go ahead.
no,
Go
no,
back
that
to.
was important. That was important, man. Feel free to interject if there's any more updates or if someone gets traded in the middle of the pod. Hopefully not, but at least not right now.
Well,
That
the only
being
guy
said,
that could is Cody Clemens.
yeah, yeah, yeah. True. He's on the verge of that roster spot right now. That's I guess one of the big spring storylines for us this year. But
Yeah.
yeah. That being said, going back to Kepler, like he's hit the ball incredibly hard this spring, and I think he has like a thousand He's over 1,000 OPS this spring. I know that much. So I was a little worried because I was kind of hoping he would have just a mediocre spring and then surprise people in the regular season. Because guys who have good springs, it never seems to translate. But the underlying numbers seem to suggest that Kepler can carry that into the regular season. He's always hit the ball hard, like you said. He gets on base. I think he just brings the balance to the lineup with the plate discipline that they desperately needed. And I think he's going to be a big help. He's not what people were envisioning as like the 4-hole hitter, right-handed power hitting left fielder that we wanted. But I think he's going to be fine. He was really, really good in right field. I'm curious to see, I think he'll be fine in left field. Obviously, it's a little bit of an adjustment, but I think we talked about that when we signed him, Drew, and we did our pod in the offseason. I think he'll adjust fine to that. He's athletic. Even though he's a little bit older, he's 32, I think. I think he'll be fine out there. And left field and CBP isn't necessarily the hardest, and he's going to have Marsh and Rojas helping in center field. So I think he'll be okay.
Yep. Some little bit of our propaganda. Alvarado just struck out the side again.
There you go. He's gross, man. I think I saw he's allowed 2 hits. He's faced 35 batters this spring.
Yeah, it's crazy. So. He's been incredible, and he just did it again. Yeah,
unreal.
I don't. What can you say? I mean, he's ridiculous.
Yeah, no, I'm excited for that. I'm excited. Did you have anything else on Kepler before we kind of move to the bench and wrap up here?
No, I think that's it.
All right. Well, the bench, obviously, like we said, Marchand's going to be there. I'm very excited for him, playing him I guess around every 5th day, maybe not quite, but regardless, I'll get the day games too on Sundays. So I'm excited, man. He was fun to watch last year. His bat has been good in the majors, even though it hasn't been super consistent in the minors, like you said. It's kind of an interesting thing. We'll see as pitchers get a little bit more of a book on him if he still continues that. But again, they're not going to get a huge book on him. He's not playing every single day. So that's going to be a big help for him. I think he's going to still continue to play well. And it can't be worse than the production we got offensively out of the backup catcher position last year. So that being said, Garrett Stubbs is a great third catcher to have in AAA, but I'm glad he's in AAA this year. I think that's for the best. So
yeah, his batting numbers are very reminiscent of Andrew Knapp of his last couple of years in Philly. So he definitely needed to go down to AAA because you can't have that much of a liability in the backup catcher position. Most catchers they don't play as much as JT, so most teams can't afford to have a guy like that. And I mean, I don't even think the Phillies should deal with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%. So yeah, again, great AAA depth to have because Marchand does tend to get hurt. So it's a good option to have as your third catcher. Most teams don't have a third catcher option like that. So that's good. But moving on to the rest of the bench, we talked about Rojas already, so I don't really need to rehash that. Sosa
kind of talked about Sosa. Yeah.
He'll be fine.
He is what he is. He's a versatile infielder that's gonna hit some bombs. He's gonna strike out a lot. It is what it is. He's solid though. He's one of the better bench players you're gonna find.
Definitely, yeah, and I think he's definitely beloved by the Phillies fan base, which is cool too. So he'll be fine. And then the last bench spot, I mean, Wes Wilson was not fully healthy this spring. He was definitely the leading candidate for it. I don't know. Did they say if he's going to start the year on the IL or not? Or
he will. He will. So it's either going to be Buddy Kennedy or Cody Clemens, and Cody Clemens has no options. So if it's not him, then you got to let him go.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think they're both up this year. So
yikes! I don't know. You'd try to trade Cody Clemens if you're not going to put him on the roster. 100%.
Definitely.
So
yeah. And I think you're probably looking for a right-handed bat just because, and again, I've referenced Matt Gelb a ton, but he is kind of he's the most in tune with the Phillies organization, I think, out of the reporters that I've come across. He made a good point. Which left-handed hitter in the lineup are you? Or sorry, right-handed hitter in the lineup are you pinch hitting Cody Clemens for right now? There's just not a lot of opportunities because if one of those guys is let's say if Rojas is playing, it'd be him, but you're pinch hitting Marsh because Marsh isn't playing.
Yep.
There's just
Yeah,
not as big a need for it.
yeah, it's a tough spot because I mean they
He's
have
good,
Sosa
he's a good bench
taking
player too.
yeah, they have Sosa taking outfield reps. So even if you need to put somebody in for Kepler, or Marsh,
Stand there.
it's just going to be Sosa. It's yeah, I don't really know. There's really not a place for the last bench guy at this point, honestly. I mean, obviously you need your bench guys and you need them to be solid, but I think the last bench spot is not as important.
Yeah. And it's probably going to fluctuate throughout the year too.
Yeah. When
Especially if
Weston
West.
Wilson's back, he's probably that guy. I would
He's the guy.
assume he's been pretty good. So
Yeah. He's been really good with us, man. I mean, he's been a
yeah,
big surprise.
yeah, it's definitely definitely a little bit of a shock, but
Yeah.
I don't know what you do with Cody Clemens. I mean, he's a solid player. They just don't have a place for him. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It's
And
going to be interesting.
you'd like to get some value. Like I know you're not getting anything crazy in a trade, but you'd like to get some value out of him if you can. But
Yeah,
yeah. And like Buddy Kennedy, like yeah, he's hit for power this spring, but he's also hitting like I think he's hitting like 162. Like he has a 780 OPS, but he hasn't necessarily earned that spot either. So yeah, it's a tough spot to be in for sure. But again, it's the last bench spot, so I don't think anyone's going to be up in arms with whatever decision is made.
yeah, yeah. Most of the time, that last bench spot guy, like he's just going to be playing whenever somebody's off a day. So you can kind of deal with it a little bit if they're not as good. But I think Cody Clemens is fine. Like I'd rather have Cody Clemens than Buddy Kennedy.
Me too. Yeah, and if you want to keep him on there just for the start of the season, and then when West comes back, you ship him off somewhere, or before that you ship him off, that'd be fine. I mean, there's other guys who could come up too on the 40 man that they could use in that role. If there's an in between time when Cody gets shipped off and Weston is not like quite ready yet. So, but that's pretty much everyone, man. I mean, we talked a little bit about the farm too. Like there's some exciting things happening there. We'll talk about that more, I'm sure, as the season goes on too. But I don't know. There's not really much else to talk player wise. I guess it's just, again, the window is not wide open anymore. So it's time for this team to go out and prove it this year. And I think they're definitely hungry after last year, but that doesn't elevate you to a World Series win. It just comes with building over the 162. So I'm just going to go ahead and make my win-loss prediction. I think they'll probably win like 91 games this year. I think they finish second in the division, but I think they do make the NLCS this year. I mean, I think they absolutely can win the World Series. I think the potential is there. It's been there the past 3 years. I like the additions they made. I don't think they lost a ton this offseason. Like, yeah, Estevez Hoffman was tough, but I do think they have replacements for those guys too, and I think they're going to be able to survive without them. I think it comes down to me just how the bats are going to perform in the playoffs, and it's tough to like think about that the whole season. So I'm going to enjoy the regular season because you don't know if the playoffs is going to be disappointing or not. But enjoy the regular season. It's just, I don't want to sit here and think about like dread the bats in the playoffs, but I do think they can win the World Series this year.
Yeah, I mean, my win prediction for the year is 93 games.
Yeah,
it's not much different than yours, obviously. So, I mean, the pitching is going to carry this team for a lot of the games, and I mean, if the lineup can show up in the playoffs, they could 100%, like you said, win the World Series. So, it's just going to come down to what the bats do in the key moments.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And as far as the division goes, like I've definitely when the Soto signing happened, I was definitely upset, but I've definitely cooled off since then. Like their rotation is a major concern. I don't think they have a ton in the bullpen right now, and I think they're like Nimmo has plantar fasciitis. That is not a recipe for success for him moving forward. There's issues like I don't think Vientos is really like that great either. I've always been kind of on fraud watch for him. We'll see. Maybe he proves me wrong again. He definitely hurt me when he played in the playoff series against us last year for whatever reason. But I think they have a couple of I don't think Francisco Alvarez is that great. They're top of the lineup, definitely legit, but I don't know. They don't scare me a ton going in this year. I think the Braves, like they may finish above us, but like we're right there with them. Obviously, we're not really scared of them coming into the playoffs either. But and then there's the Marlins and Nationals. Like the Marlins, that goes without saying. They are what they are. They're rebuilding. And the Nationals are getting better, but they're still going to kind of be in that rebuild mode, retool mode this year. So I mean, the path is there. They're going to be a playoff team most likely. There's not necessarily like anything daunting in the division right now. The National League is very good, but they can absolutely make their way through that bracket if they have a good year. So anything else you wanted to touch on before we wrap up here?
No, I think that was pretty much it. I mean, I have high expectations for this team still, so I definitely think they could either bust or not make the playoffs at all if they have injury problems, or they could go out and win the World Series and nobody would be surprised. So I,
Sure.
I I'm just definitely looking forward to this season, and that's pretty much all I have.
Definitely, man. Yeah, well, I'm excited. I really do think they have a shot this year, and I really hope the year ends with a parade on Broad Street. But obviously, only one team wins it, so going to enjoy this opening day weekend, and I'm really excited for that. So, yeah, Nerio's got one more question.
I
We'll
see
take
that.
one more before we wrap up here. We'll patiently wait as he types in his question. But yeah, I'm excited for them. I'm excited for the farm too. I think there's some exciting things happening in the farm system this year as well. And yeah, I'm curious. I guess while we're waiting for Nerio's question, do you have any like surprise guys or like any guy who from the minors you're expecting to come up this year?
No, I mean, I think most of the guys that have potential to be on the roster, we kind of know about for the most part. Like, I
Sure.
don't think there's any that are going to really shock us. But yeah, maybe I'd be surprised. I don't know. I haven't
Mhm.
I haven't really went through and like dug deep on the roster and like
Yeah.
the higher minor depth yet for this year. So I guess
Mhm.
we'll see.
Sure. I guess if you have some outfield injuries and Crawford's hitting well, maybe he gets an appearance or two here and there, or like a little stint. And then maybe Moises Chase gets called up if you have some pitching injuries too. I know he's been mentioned because he has really good stuff. So, but
Yeah.
Nero asks about our underrated Phillies player for the year. So I don't know if you have someone in mind, Drew. I need like probably a second to think about it, but um,
Yeah.
given everything we talked about, anyone jump out to you?
I mean, I think Bryson Stott could prove a lot of people wrong this year because he had a bad year last year, and they kind of like threw him on. Like everybody kind of, he's like a second thought, you know. Like I don't know. I think he could have a nice year this year and kind of cement himself as one of the best second basemen in the league. But I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I like
The
that.
Phillies are so high profile at this point. It's hard to have underrated
Yeah,
guys
it's
like
very hard.
Kirkering's kind of underrated, I guess you could say, because people just don't know about bullpen guys
Yeah.
like around the league. Like I don't know who the Dodgers have. I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I like the past couple years. I think Sanchez was my pick, but that's kind of there's national media saying he's an under the radar Cy Young pick now, so he's
Yeah,
not really
yeah. That
underrated.
cat's out of the bag a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. um, I'll just go Kepler just because he's kind of known at this point, but I think he's going to exceed expectations this year. And I do think something that I kind of took note of this offseason was the wall in Target Field is like 25 feet high. I think at
I
Citizens Bank it's like half of that. So
think it's like 13. Yeah,
yeah, and he's not like a pull hitter necessarily, but I do think that gets him a couple extra home runs this year, like maybe 3 or 4 more. And I think he's probably a 20 home run guy this year. I think he probably hits 21, 22 bombs. I think he probably knocks in like 70, 80 runs. And I think he's probably like an 800 OPS guy because of his on base percentage this year. So that's, I guess, my bolder prediction is that Kepler is going to definitely be one of the brighter spots in the lineup. Like he might be a top 4 or 5 hitter in the lineup if some guy has a down year. So uh, that's my underrated guy, I guess. But anyway, I think that's all we got. So thank you guys for sticking through the hour with us. We really appreciate all you. Really excited for the season, and yeah, looking forward to doing some post games and trade deadline and playoffs and all that when it comes. But enjoy opening day. Anything you want to say, Drew?
no, I mean that's you pretty much hit it on the head.
Thank you guys so much for watching, and looking forward to a great season. Peace.